Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our California Apprenticeship Initiative webinar for this morning, Non-Traditional Apprenticeships, Lessons from a Cross-Sector Partnership. I just want to confirm, can everybody hear me okay? Caleb, do I sound okay coming through my phone? Yes.
Yep, that sounds great.
All right, thank you all for bearing with us as we have another CCC Confer webinar, and I'm sure all of you community colleges know that we are switching over mid-month. Confer is going to move to a new platform, and so we'll have all sorts of new things to learn. But hopefully we will have many more incident-free webinars in the future. So I just wanted to welcome everyone. Again, this is Jessie Ettinger from the Technical Assistance team, and I wanted to welcome you all this morning to our July webinar, Non-Traditional Apprenticeships, Lessons from a Cross-Sector Partnership. And I just wanted to give a brief introduction to this webinar, which is that myself and Joshua Moslin saw a version of this presentation at WorkCon back in May, and we just looked at each other and said, we have to bring this to our CAI grantees for a couple of reasons. One, it's just super interesting. It's an apprenticeship program and a veterinary assistant program. So that's something I think new to a lot of our grantees and perhaps relevant to many of your colleges or school districts where you're looking at different healthcare apprenticeship program, so it's just kind of a cool program, interesting model. But also, you know, I think one of the things that's really interesting as we move into more rounds of investment from the Chancellor's office, but also possibly the federal government, and apprenticeship is starting to take on some steam. Just thinking about different models for adopting apprenticeship in different occupations and industry, and the sort of system level challenges it presents and the kinds of partnerships that evolve. Very interesting, and what really spoke to me about this presentation from our presenters who are from the San Francisco SPCA and Jewish Vocational Services in San Francisco is that they were very reflective on the process and on the different roles that you know, the employer can play, or an intermediary, or a college. And so I'm so pleased that they agreed to join us for this webinar today. And they did it before they even found out that they are awardees of a round 3 CHI grant. So they are also part of our grantee community. We didn't know that when we invited them to do this webinar, but we're just delighted. And so you can look forward to asking them questions after this webinar, but also seeing them at future CHI labs. So these are some new members to our cohort. And I feel like that's all I really need to say. I'm going to let Alice and Lisa introduce themselves, and I just want to let everyone know that, of course, we would love to have questions. Please tap them through the chat box, and we will respond to them at the end of the webinar. And as long as I am here talking, I just wanted to remind everybody to please mute yourself. Take a second to do that right now. We are hearing a little bit of background chatter. So if everyone would just please mute themselves, we won't have to blanket mute people, and that would be a lot easier, I think, for everyone. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Lisa and Alice. And thank you all for joining us again.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Jessie. I am here. My name is Lisa Countryman. I'm the Vice President of Planning and Program Development at JBS in San Francisco. And I am here with my colleague, Alice Jordan, who's the Senior Vice President of People Development and Education at the San Francisco SPCA. And unfortunately, the third member of our triumvirate or trifecta here is Lisa Eshman, and she could not be here with us in person today. So unfortunately, we won't have her, but Alice and I will press on nevertheless. Thank you all for making time. I know everyone's super busy to participate in this webinar, and Jesse gave us a really nice, robust intro, so I won't belabor it, but I just wanted to clarify that I think key learnings that you will take away from participating in this webinar today will be kind of a case study of how we built a successful and effective cross-sector partnership, which we have found to be really essential to building this non-traditional apprenticeship. That's the first thing, and then really what it took to build the partnership and the program model, where we achieved success there, and also what we're still learning. Because building the partnership was the first phase, and now really refining the program and integrating work and education, that's really the next frontier of work for us. So I thank you and welcome, and I hope to have lots of questions from all of you.
And I just want you to know, this is Lisa Eshman. I'm available on through the webinar too. I'll mute myself now, but I am here.
Great. Okay. Good morning, Lisa. So the slide you have up is basically exactly what Lisa just said. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alice Jordan from the San Francisco SPCA, and we're looking at the logos of the three partners. And it's nice to have Lisa Eshman, who is the veterinarian in charge of the program, the veterinary technology program at Foothill College, on the phone with us as well. So there are the amazing three partners that built this apprenticeship, or I should correct myself, who are still continuing to build this apprenticeship.
So the team rules here, I just want to emphasize that this took, of course, these three different institutions working together, the SPCA as the employer partner, which is obviously without which we could not do this program, Foothill College, which is the LEA, or Lead Educational Agency, and curriculum consultant, and JVS, which has operated as the CBO workforce intermediary on this project and has really acted as the glue to help draw all of the each of the organization's goals into a shared goal. So our original concept for this project goes back to a California Workforce Development Board accelerator grant, which we were funded for to develop actually a registered veterinary technician apprenticeship program. And our goal there was to really find a way to turn a licensed position, an RVT position, into an apprenticeship. And our accelerator grant was designed to be really a research and development grant, so not a delivery of services grant, but a grant where the objective was to build a model that would be effective and successful for all stakeholders, the employer, the job seeker, and of course the rest of us who are making it happen. And through the course of doing that research and development work, partnering together, understanding what the opportunities and barriers were for each organization, we realized that at this beginning point, turning that licensed position, the training required for that licensed position, into a 2-year apprenticeship was really too heavy of a lift. And so what we did is we took that first year of the 2-year Foothill RVT program and we built that out into a 2-year apprenticeship such that completers of that 2-year apprenticeship would be able to take those credits that they had acquired, and those credits would articulate into the second year of the RVT apprenticeship program at Foothill College, so that participants could choose to continue through the program, stay at a VA4, VA5 level if they chose, or they could take that experience, those credits, and then transfer that into the second year of the RVT program and get their licensure.
So at this point, it makes sense to just share with you a little bit about, let me help you understand what happens in a veterinary hospital or clinic setting in terms of the roles. So Lisa talked about both an RVT and a VA. And an RVT is a licensed position. It's licensed by the California Medical Board. And in order to become an RVT, you need to have completed a series of coursework and complete a series of on-the-job training. There are a few not that many, but still really important procedures that only an RVT can do. A veterinary assistant is a non-licensed position within a veterinary setting, and a veterinary assistant is a critical and very valuable member of the team, doing many, many of the things that an RVT does, and unless we come up against the several things that only an RVT can do. What's interesting is one of the things that sets these two positions aside is there is formal training, such as the program at Foothill for RVTs, and there's formal training for RVTs locally and across the country, both at community colleges and several for-profit organizations that do online training or classroom training. But training for a vet assistant is not formalized. Most vet assistants learn at the elbow of a very generous veterinarian in a small practice or perhaps several experienced technicians within a larger practice. So we are just, one of the unique things about our apprenticeship program is we are at the very beginning stages of hopefully shifting that paradigm a little bit. So what's the backstory here? And really, it begins with a hiring challenge that we have at the San Francisco SPCA, which is not a unique hiring challenge to any veterinary practice. It goes back, though, to 2012 when we began to experience a shortage of both registered veterinary technicians in particular, but also experienced veterinary assistants in San Francisco. And we spent a lot of time, as an HR department would do, doing all of the traditional and then many non-traditional hiring techniques to see if we could overcome this challenge. And we thought we were being pretty clever with all of our recruiting, and nonetheless could not crack this nut, if you will. At the same time, as I mentioned, we're learning that other veterinary practices, both in the city and sort of the Bay Area, and my colleagues across the country are experiencing the same shortage. And it's beginning to be written about in some of the medical journals. There's a great article entitled "Where Have All the Technicians Gone?" that was written several years ago in one of the medical journals. So we have this problem, and in the same city that we work in is an amazing organization that is all about workforce development. And as it happens, we have mutual board members who make a connection, and that's really where we have a problem. We, the San Francisco SPCA, maybe Jewish Vocational Services can help you with a solution. And that rubs, timing-wise, up against another sort of surge in the country, which is the elevation of apprenticeships in non-traditional fields. So it's a little bit like the perfect storm coming together there as JBS, Foothill College, and the San Francisco SPCA begin to sit down at the table and try to sort out, could we figure this thing out? And now we're talking 2015. Mm-hmm. And Lisa, you can pick up the story
Sure. So what you're seeing here is a pretty simple timeline. We first connected in July of 2015, and very shortly thereafter, I believe it was the first round of California Apprenticeship Initiative grants came out. We had been talking about, this looks like this could be an apprenticeship. That could be the best solution. You need people coming in who are going to be working and learning at the same time, and an apprenticeship model can really help fill that need. And so our partnership began in earnest in September of 2015, and we were really working to figure out how would we be responsive to this opportunity, and how would we quickly build the model to be responsive actually to this funding opportunity. And we ended up abandoning the project, at least in terms of submitting a grant application at that time because we couldn't really figure out how to put the pieces together. You know, what was surfacing first for us were really the barriers and the limitations, which I think is always kind of the thing that you see first. And so we stepped away, but we didn't deprioritize it. So we were still interested in solving the problem, but we couldn't solve the problem on the timeline required by the grant application. A factor with which I'm sure we are all very familiar. In about a year later, in September of 2016, we had revisited this opportunity again, and we saw that we could apply for a California Workforce Development Board Accelerator grant that was in the 4.0 cycle. And in that case, we were really able to set up exactly the problem that we had, which is we don't know what the model needs to be, and we actually need some resources to spend some time to work together to figure out how to make it work. That's the project. The project is not yet delivery of services, it's designing the program. So that was a really perfect fit for us. For those of you in California, the accelerator grants are great to solve exactly these kinds of problems. So I encourage you to look at them for that. And in November of the same year, we actually decided to go for the CAI grant. This is the second time looking at it, but the first time applying for it, we were not funded, unfortunately. And it may have actually turned out to be fortunate because that gave us the full, really probably 18 months ultimately that it took to design the program, which we did in February of 2018. We secured our registered apprenticeship status through Division of Apprenticeship Standards in California, which was very exciting. We had anticipated that that would be one of the biggest hurdles, the most challenging, and actually I think once we had the resources we needed to develop and design the model in a really careful way, we were much better positioned to just secure that apprenticeship status. We launched the program then in April of 2018, and in May we were awarded our first CAI grant.
And really in this timeline, if you look at it, it's the biggest pieces of work happened between November 2016 up until really the program launch. I mean that, but the program really comes together between the fall of 2016 and really spring of 2018. So it was a long process.
That's right.
So this slide really paints a picture of the trajectory for a vet assistant at the San Francisco SPCA within the apprenticeship program. So initially, our outreach is to a very broad pool of candidates, and they come to us with very little or zero experience working in a veterinary setting. What we've discovered is some people do have some experience working with animals, but working with animals and working in a veterinary setting is very different. And they start with us as Veterinary Assistant 1, and throughout the program, the 2 years of the program, they are moving from a VA1 to a VA3. And at the end of the program, they are in the early stages of a VA3. And now this is what Lisa talked a little bit about in the very beginning. They're positioned at the end of the 2-year program, at least we would like to believe. We're 4 months into it, and that this is 2 years away. But our assumption and what we plan for is our participants at the end of the 2-year program are positioned to be excellent, amazing, outstanding employees of the San Francisco SPCA, which from my perspective is the #1 thing that we want. And I think we will have achieved that. For their career path, it continues on at the San Francisco SPCA. They can finish really building out their skills as a VA3, and then we have 2 more levels, a VA4 and a VA5. And these are highly skilled, sought-after professionals within the veterinary setting. They also have the option if we have enticed them the way we think we have, and if our first cohort is any example of that, they are pretty keen on going to Foothill College. So they will finish with us, and the beauty of the program is, for the most part, not down to every last I dotted and T crossed, but almost there. When they finish the VA3 program, they will have to take just a few other classes and perhaps complete another series of prerequisites, but they will be ready to jump into year 2 of the 2-year RVT program at Foothill College. Hopefully they will do that and continue to work for us. From the employer perspective, if we have all of our apprentices go off to college, that's great for them, and we haven't really fulfilled the original goal that we set up, which was to build a pipeline of highly skilled employees. To be determined. Who knows what will look like at the end. So there are 4 bullet points here, and I think, you know, the more we get into, the more we talk about it, there are probably 7 or 8 key factors that drive the evolution of the program. But first and foremost is the integration of the curriculum at Foothill into the training, and balancing that with the on-the-job training that veterinary assistants would need to have to be successful employees. And that integration of that training consumed, what would you say, Lisa Eshman, probably at least 50% to 75% of our early work was figuring out this model. And one of the interesting growth of that model is now members of the SPCA team are now Foothill College faculty as well, so that they can teach college classes on the SPCA campus. So that was a sort of fascinating outcome of that. We had to figure out the role of the accrediting bodies, that not only being that Foothill College, but also the AVMA, who plays a key role in this process, and certainly looking at how are we going to sustain this model financially. We knew coming into it that the Cadillac of apprenticeship programs would be an apprenticeship program where the apprentices were not only doing OJT time, but getting actual college credit for their courses and being paid for that. And so we set out to build the Cadillac, and it took a while, as we've already acknowledged, but that is where we landed with a program that our apprentices within their 40-hour work week, some of that is going to college. That is an expensive model, and one that our board signed on to because of our need to really crack the nut, again, if you will, around our continuing problem with recruiting veterinary technicians and veterinary assistants. Would you add anything there?
I think the other thing that I would add is just that second bullet point about developing an appropriate financial model. So just as, you know, I'm sure that Alice and I are both thinking about the look back and wanting to convey what it took, and also thinking about the evolution of the ways each of these key aspects or core aspects of the program, the partnership, continue to inform the tweaks that we're making to the model. So I think developing an appropriate financial model was really, really key, and choosing to go the route of establishing a formal registered apprenticeship was a piece of making that work, as was the decision to ensure that several SPCA staff members became adjunct faculty of Foothill College. That was another way of managing the costs of the program. And ensuring that, of course, on the other side of that, on the expense side, making sure that the apprentices were paid for their training, their OJT, their work experience, and of course acquiring credit. So getting every advantage from the work and the time that they're putting in. Great. Okay. So diving in, this is really, the core of what we wanted to share with you today. What did it take? What are our key lessons learned from the project at this point? First would be that essential to this project was, and what surfaced as barriers initially and became those things around which we built solutions, were understanding that we each had different goals. We needed to bring those goals into alignment. So the SPCA, as we talked about, had a pipeline challenge, a workforce challenge. JBS is in the business of building strong partnerships with employers and educators in order to get people with barriers to employment into good jobs. And Foothill College, of course, is in the business of educating people and making sure that people not only have access to training and meaningful education, but that they are supported in doing that, and then that connects to employment. So while each of us, I think, recognized the shared goals from the beginning, bringing our ways of doing business and our priorities into alignment was really key to making the partnership work. And I would say, that took a good chunk of our time to bring those things into alignment as well.
I think I want to credit JBS here in the role of really moving us through that process, the process of aligning our goals. And Lisa referred to JBS as providing the glue, which was really necessary. And again, remember that since when we started talking in 2015, we all but gave up more than once and came back to the table, all of us, the Foothill team that we worked with, the SPCA team and the JBS team, really committing to not only identifying the barriers, but getting over the barriers.
Thank you. And similarly, I think we had a fantastic partner, continue to have a fantastic partner in the SPCA, which has been a unique employer, bringing resources, really a passion to expand the field, create more access to the field. SPCA really brings an equity lens, I believe, to this project, which is to make sure that the staff members reflect the client base that they're serving. And they had a significant problem to solve around which they partnered with JBS to resolve that. And SPCA has a legacy of being the first to create solutions where none existed in the past. So being an innovator, being an anchor in the community, and bringing that equity lens, I think all are key to the SPCA's identity, and also were essential factors in their ongoing commitment and or return to commitment to making this program a reality.
Thank you. And then thirdly, not only did we have a partner in Foothill College, but Nanette Swanson, the Dean of, I can't quite remember Nanette's full title, Biological and Health Sciences at Foothill College. What Nanette brought to the table was an entrepreneurial spirit, the willingness to take a look at the Foothill, the college structure and poke at it a bit and say, well, this is the structure that we've worked in for many years, but if we move and bend and shift just a little bit, maybe we can find a new model that will work. She also was incredibly generous in sharing her resources, one of which is Dr. Eshman, who's on the line with us today, the director of the program, who has become a great partner for our team at the San Francisco SPCA and spends many hours with us, including all day this Monday.
That's right. I think especially for this group, it can't be underestimated the importance of Nanette's entrepreneurial spirit, her desire to find solutions where the barriers might be obvious. It might be the first thing that you see, but her response to a closed door has always been to find that other window in to resources or to opportunities and to making things happen. So that's been absolutely crucial to making this project and program a reality. Additionally, I would say this is not a partnership where we're really talking about vendor relationships. This is a true, equal, three-way partnership, and we've been in the trenches together now for 3 years, and I think that's been essential to making this successful and productive for everyone as well. It goes far beyond a set of transactional kinds of relationships. In fact, we're working really closely in a way that I think goes even beyond, JVS partners pretty broadly, and I would say that this partnership is unique for the depth of the relationship and the fact that we're really working together even around things like fundraising. So we're working closely to pursue additional and ongoing funding. So I would say that's innovative and definitely new for us.
And should we talk here, Lisa, a little bit more about now what we're learning as we launch the program and move into it? Or do you want to talk about the matrix first? What makes sense here?
Absolutely. I was just going to make reference to this last bullet point here, which is fearlessness. So a willingness to change perspectives and to be tenacious in the partnership. So I think actually the SPCA has exhibited a lot of fearlessness. If you want to.
Well, so here we are having launched in April and already realizing that our assumptions that we made, some of which have panned out beautifully, and we feel like we kind of got it, and a whole bucket of other things that we are like, I wonder if this is really achieving both our initial goals and or how, now that we've launched and have only 4 months of experience, where do we need to make some adjustments to really make it even a better experience on both sides for our apprentices, but also for the SPCA team that they're integrating with. I would say that that's probably the #1 learning from an employer perspective. Although we thought we had done a good job of setting up an internal system that built this program and a communication plan, it has been one of the challenges is integrating a group of employees who literally look different because they wear a different color scrub, but have a very different perspective on their role at the San Francisco SPCA, because they are both the employee and the student all rolled into one. And I don't have any great advice about that. I don't have any lessons learned there, because we are still unraveling that with the folks on the ground here at JVS who are in the program with us, and with Lisa at Foothill. So our learning is there around the integration of the student and the employee into the program.
Great. So finally, this is a tool that I am including here around kind of a way of, and I know that almost everyone on the line is a CAI grantee, so you're already in it. But this, looking back on our process, we created this matrix as a way of kind of assessing or helping others assess their readiness, to assess their partnership and where there are opportunities or areas of potential growth and development. So this breaks out by key partner, so employer, LEA, and CBO or workforce intermediary. And the horizontal here is sort of an assessment of, is this a go? Is this an opportunity where you want to continue to explore but perhaps not to expect immediate action? Or are these red flags where you should really consider slowing down, potentially even coming to the realization that you might need to stop the project? And it's really about the level of employer commitment, which I've targeted this as primary. Without the employer, you cannot build an apprenticeship. And so we were fortunate in having SPCA as what I would call an all-in partner. They were really driving the partnership. They wanted it to happen. They recognized that this was a solution to their workforce challenge, and so were engaged, even at times when it looked like the partnership might not pan out. They continued to take my calls, answer my emails, and to continue to consider how this would work. The next level, the LEA. I think having an LEA that, like Lisa Eshman and Annette, have that entrepreneurial spirit where they're really actively seeking solutions, even as they acknowledge that there are barriers and challenges and that the system's not set up to help roll out these programs super smoothly. Nevertheless, there are a ton of resources behind doors, under rocks, behind curtains, and if they're actively seeking solutions, again, that's another great sign that is an ideal partner. I would continue to pursue those partnerships if they're exhibiting flexibility. Maybe they are really focused on the existing delivery structure. But if they're interested in building out innovative programs, I would say continue to pursue that partnership. And then lastly, at least from our experience, having a nonprofit CBO workforce intermediary has been key to making this project a reality. And in many cases, that is sort of, as I said, the glue, but that's kind of the extra resource, right? That is the partner who tries to resolve problems, continues to shepherd the work forward, and has the capacity and has prioritized creating that partnership. So I would say, and I would probably go into this assuming that the workforce intermediary is, of course, invested in making this happen. They're least likely to be the reluctant partner in this kind of partnership. So I'm really interested also in pivoting to all of your questions so that we can dig into the meat of this that's most interesting to you. So Jesse, would you like to kick that off?
Okay. So I just wanted to remind folks that if they have questions, they can chat them in the chat box, and that'll keep us from speaking over each other. It's hard to do conversation management with this many people, so please use the chat box. Kristen's been in there chatting. And my first question is it's based on what Kristen asked, but I think what's really interesting here is, I think two of the major motivations for all the support we're seeing for apprenticeships at a system level are obviously primarily that it's a way to meet employer demand for employees. And so we talked a lot about how this is meeting SPCA's challenge of finding those veterinary assistants and veterinary techs. But one of the things Kristen raised, and I feel like maybe we didn't give this enough credence or enough time earlier, and that's why I pushed you guys to get through it as quickly as possible to get questions. But how is this pathway different than a traditional vet tech pathway? And sort of sub-question to that, I think the other reason why we're really interested in apprenticeship is it opens up pathways for non-traditional students. So can you talk a little bit about who you're targeting and how this program is designed to work for them?
Do you want me to talk about how it's different from traditional vet tech students, or you want to talk about who you're targeting first, Alice?
Let's start with how.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Lisa. I do hear you. So let's talk. Lisa, why don't we start with you about how it's different than a traditional vet tech pathway, and then Lisa Countryman and Alice can talk about how they're appealing to maybe a different population of people who might not have access to this kind of job.
Okay. So a traditional pathway for veterinary technology students, if you think of veterinary technology as very similar to nursing, so it's the same thing as human nursing, except it's traditionally a 2-year program. There are 4-year programs, but there are few of them. Most of our vet tech programs are 2-year programs. And most people come to these programs with a little bit of experience or strong knowledge that they want to become veterinary nurses. They complete a series of prerequisites either prior to applying to the program, which is true for our program, but other schools will allow students to take the prerequisites as they progress through the classes. And it's usually a 3-year process of full-time school plus internship hours where they're working in the field for anywhere from 10 to 15 hours per week for part of their career. In the state of California, and the other thing about veterinary technology is it's licensed state by state. So all I know about is California. And in the state of California, you have to go through an AVMA accredited program, and then the state will allow you, with one exception, to sit for the licensing exam after you complete your program. Once you're licensed, there are very specific things that only veterinary technicians can do, which Alice kind of alluded to on that one of the slides. I think it was slide number 8. And so that's the more traditional approach. And our students are fairly diverse except for sex. It's almost 90% or higher female. But as far as diversity goes, we're fairly diverse, but we're always looking to incorporate people from various socioeconomic backgrounds and various races and everything else. We're always trying to make our student population very diverse, but most of our students are proven college students, and they have some experience with college. And that's a little bit of a contrast with our apprenticeship students, where they are also a diverse population from various socioeconomic backgrounds, but many of them have limited college experience. And that's been a little bit of a challenge for our apprenticeship students, but also something that we anticipated, and that's why we are taking 2 years for them to go through the first year of the program that our students go through. So that's like a nutshell of what it takes to be a vet tech student in the more traditional program as compared to apprenticeship.
Terrific. And then Alice and Lisa Countryman, do you guys want to talk a little bit about how your program recruits maybe a different population and how you support them? And Alice, especially, you know, if the SPCA has so that's coming from a values-based position. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sorry, we somehow got muted. Yeah. So I think that what Lisa Eshman just described kind of sets us up to talk about both how the apprentices are a bit different from the traditional students, how the program itself is designed to be responsive to that. And so a piece of that is we definitely anticipated, because we were going to be targeting lower income people with less formal education and probably lower basic skills levels. A key, and I would say this actually took a good chunk of time for us to figure out and come to agreement on. But you know, in a traditional college setting, you have these foundational courses that are very abstract and theoretical, like Algebra 1 or Biology 101, or even an English composition course. And what we wanted to do was flip that model so we could get to the more contextualized, more specific material first without having that foundation of biology or algebra, which can become a barrier for people who are not, who've not exhibited a lot of success in pure academic pursuits. And so we wanted to make sure that we were providing the training and information they needed up front that would connect to their OJT and their work thus contextualizing this is why anatomy matters, or this is why fractions are so important for medication administration, things like that. And I think, so the design of the program is meant to be responsive to that, and I think we're still working on building out how do we ensure that we have enough tutoring supports, or perhaps it's a question of how do we partner to make sure that there's a referral to the fact that that participant needs some tutoring supports if they're not actively seeking it out themselves. So that would be an example of some of the work going forward to be done. In terms of recruiting, JBS is the lead of the City and County of San Francisco's Healthcare Academy, and so our recruiting at public housing with our other CBO partners, at the neighborhood access points and specialized access.
Uh-oh, Lisa, we lost you. Lisa, I think you might have muted yourself. Oh, so it looks like we might have lost Lisa. You know, this happened to me in a national webinar. My webinar platform shut down in the middle of my presentation. It was very stressful. So we are going to give her a second to join again, and Eduardo will add her back. And in the meantime, I just want to remind folks, Lisa's back, terrific. So, and you are now a moderator again. We hear you. Good job.
I'm so sorry.
No, I was just saying this happened to me in a national webinar a few weeks ago. It was very stressful, so it's okay. These things happen.
When did you stop hearing me?
We stopped hearing you when you talked about how you recruit through the San Francisco network of access points as a good place to look for candidates for your program.
Yes, and then, yes, so this is part of our Healthcare Academy recruiting, which is really focused on serving people who are low income and who are WIOA eligible or who are in CalWORK. And we also have the additional preference from SPCA to try and get people into this program who are in the neighborhood. So there's a focus on the mission as well.
And one of the things that's unique to, well, it's not really unique to San Francisco, the cost of living is so high. We made this assumption that if we could offer this program to people who already have deep roots in San Francisco, they grew up in San Francisco, their families are in San Francisco, that they would be more likely to stay in San Francisco if they had a career path that would grow their income. And instead of training folks who would get fabulous training but then not be able to live in the city and take their training somewhere else.
Great. So, my next, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was just going to say, my next question is for Lisa Eshman, and actually your whole team, but a lot of curiosity from this crowd about how you got the SPCA staff approved as faculty at Foothill College. So it sounds like that was a really important point in making this work, and you know, this can be tough.
Okay, so that was a combination of me being familiar with some of the faculty at the SPCA, plus what our accreditor requires. So we're very strictly monitored by the American Veterinary Medical Association's Committee on Veterinary Technician Education and Activities, which is a big mouthful. But they're the ones who accredit us and give us the power to confer an AS degree on people who can then sit for the board exam. And one of the very strict rules that they have is that our students have to fulfill a series of about 100 essential skills or essential tasks that are psychomotor skills that they must perform in front of a registered veterinary technician or a California licensed veterinarian. So those people have to be faculty with the college in order for the student to demonstrate proficiency in those skills. And so anybody at the SPCA who's going to be observing students had to be faculty. So that was one way that we were able to ensure that they were faculty. And the way we did it was had them apply to the college to be part-time faculty. But when they were working for the SPCA, they weren't paid by load, they're paid by the SPCA as part of their job. So their title is part-time faculty, but their payment is through their regular job at the SPCA. And then there's also somebody who's helping to teach the classes at the SPCA who's a licensed RVT, and he is also part-time faculty, but paid by the SPCA. And so that was a way for us to keep our college administrators happy that we weren't just costing a bunch of money to the school with a low number of students, but still get the students what they need in terms of their education. And then I worked very closely with the faculty member at the SPCA to create classes that were in alignment with our course outline of record, but were registered apprenticeship classes, not vet tech classes. So there were a lot of moving parts to make sure that we were able to keep everybody happy.
Great. And Lisa Eshman, I'm just going to keep going with this. I am curious how this experience of bringing registered apprenticeship to your department. I know Sohail College has a history of working closely, with trades apprenticeship programs, but how has this built interest or appetite in other departments? How much do you know about the interest in apprenticeship more generally, and how this contributed to it?
There has been some interest. I think Nanette would probably know more than I do, because as far as within Foothill College, they would probably contact Nanette more to say, hey, other allied health programs might be interested in creating apprenticeship programs as well. But I have heard from other large veterinary employers that they're interested. So there's been some interest in other large veterinary employers who have the same problems in finding employees that the SFSPCA has had, and they're saying we want to do the same thing as well. And what traditional apprenticeships do is they'll have one training center and multiple employees, and all the different apprentices go to the one training center, and that training center teaches everything from pipe fitting to electrical to whatever other apprenticeships are being taught at that location. And then those people are distributed and they go out to their employers, but then they come back to the apprenticeship site for training. That would be a very difficult model for us to completely emulate because of the facility at the SPCA, just the basic logistics of getting more people in that space would be difficult. But it's certainly something that's kind of percolating in the background, that other large employers are interested in participating in something like this. So there has been interest, but as far as I know, nothing's been really acted upon yet.
Okay. And Alice, what would you say if another large veterinary hospital came to you and asked for, I guess, maybe your elevator pitch on when and why you should do this?
I would say a lot of what we've said in this webinar around both all of what it takes, and if they were, I think I appreciate what Lisa Eshman said, because I think our future could look really different than what it currently looks like if we get another year or two underneath our belt with this program, we could become potentially a multi-employer program with, because we're building such amazing training, we should share it. But what Lisa referred to is we don't have enough room for apprentices to work in our practices, but maybe they could work in their own practices but take classes with us. So we have lots of exciting future to think about. I have colleagues across the country and other animal welfare organizations who are interested in this model as well. And of course for them, other than needing us to get a little further down the line with lessons learned, it's also about, as we talked about, it's really not possible without the partnership of a community college and an organization like JVS. So I think my first question would be, what kind of partners do you have?
Well, it is now 11:57, and I really appreciate that you've left us on kind of a high note. Like, what will happen next? It sounds like there are a lot of really exciting opportunities. I wanted to thank all three of you again. Just Lisa Eschman, thank you for calling in from your jury duty, and Alice, thank you for being with Lisa Countryman at JVS. This has been really terrific, and we are so excited that you are part of our CII group of grantees. And I'm just going to sort of put out there for everybody, you should be getting a note from the technical assistance team, but we should be all gathering in mid-October around the CCAOE conference. So we're looking at the third week of October for our next gathering where we can all be together. And just excited to get to know all of our new grantees, including JVS, Foothill, SPCA. So thanks all for calling in today. Thank you to our presenters, and hope you all have a terrific day.